This is the Rista, and I'm Cardi, and this is the Gov Tuah Podcast. Welcome back to the Gov Tuah Podcast. This is episode, what are we on?
1629. So, in episode 1629, we're going to be talking about two court cases. We're going to be talking about Hernandez versus Texas and
Gideon versus Wainwright.
So,
let's get into it.
So, in the court case, Hernandez versus Texas, in 1954, Pete Hernandez, who was a Mexican-American man, was on trial for murder. He was prosecuted by an all-white jury. During his trial, the jury found Pete guilty of his crime. Gustavo Garcia, a Mexican-American civil rights lawyer, agreed to represent Pete in his appeal to the court's decision. He argued that his conviction was unfair because of the race of the jurors and that Mexican-American jurors were systematically excluded from jury duties. Originally, the case was upheld to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, and after not reaching a verdict, it was taken to the Supreme Court. Garcia argued that the 14th Amendment guarantees not only protection of race, but also protection of class. While Mexican Americans were considered to be white, they were also considered to be a class apart. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of Hernandez, claiming that the exclusion of Mexican Americans in courts violated equal protection held under the 14th Amendment.
So what did Hernandez ask the Supreme Court?
So essentially what he's saying is, he's asking if it's a violation of the 14th Amendment when certain races aren't allowed in juries.
So what was the court thing about his argument?
So the court ultimately agreed with Hernandez and recognized that although Americans were technically classified as white, it was unjust to not allow certain ethnic groups to be a part of juries.
All right, so how does this case affect American society?
So basically, the impact it has on American society is now civil rights are protected for all ethnicities. Prior to the Hernandez versus Texas case, the 14th Amendment served primarily to grant equal protection to African Americans. Like after the discrimination they faced in the 50s and all that. Mm-hmm. And so, after this case, equal protection under the 14th Amendment extended to all races. And then another impact we see today is equal representation in juries. So juries are going to be pulled from the community, but there's going to be equal representation and all races will be selected now.
I got you. Wow, bro. That court case was just so interesting and drippy.
Man, you know what else is drippy? Our sponsor today, Lunchly. Find it at your local Walmart if you like your cheese drippy, bruh.
Includes a prime packet for hydration.
All right, getting back to the podcast. So, Reed stuff. Can you explain your case?
Got you. So my case is Gideon versus Wainwright, and the facts of this case is we got our main character, Clarence Earl Gideon, and he was accused of breaking into a pool house and stealing several items. Yeah, he was arrested for it and put on trial.
Tight.
He requested that a lawyer be appointed him because he didn't have one, but he was refused by the court.
No way.
As a result, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. That's on the read. Hey, happens.
Sorry, it's all good.
Hey, but it's not all good for him though, because he got 5 years.
Oh, okay.
He wrote a petition to the Supreme Court saying that his Sixth Amendment right, the right to counsel, had been violated. The trial occurred in Panama City, Florida, on March 18, 1963. The court unanimously that's a hard word to say. Unanimously
can't do anything about it.
Voted in favor of Gideon 9-0, and the Supreme Court stated that the right to counsel is a fundamental right necessary to a fair trial. The states are required to provide attorneys to defendants who cannot afford them in felony cases. Gideon was then given a lawyer and had a proper trial and was acquitted of all charges.
W-mans.
Yeah,
man, that's crazy. I mean, I agree with Gideon. I think everybody should have a right to a lawyer, with the court's power. I think you should be able to hold some power too. What's your opinion?
I think it's a very necessary case, and I'm surprised it took this long for it to happen, because that's just unfair that they were treating all these people.
Yeah, man. Without lawyers.
Yeah, without a lawyer, that's crazy. And especially if you can't afford one, that's messed up. Where's the morals with that?
So are there any other cases that are relevant to this case?
Yeah, actually there is. The Betts versus Brady in 1942.
Okay.
Gideon versus Wainwright overturned this case. So what this case did in 1942 is it allowed states to have more authority to deny lawyers to defendants.
No, that's
That's messed up.
That's not right, man.
They're just trying to lock those people up.
So who's the actor in this case?
The actor in this case was Gideon because he was the one that filed the petition.
Okay, who's the recipient?
Recipient was Wainwright because he was chosen to defend the state of Florida. Pretty much, he worked as the director of the Florida Division of Corrections at this time.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
So, man, what part of the Constitution does this cover?
Glad you asked. This covers the Sixth Amendment.
And what's the Sixth Amendment?
So, Sixth Amendment has a lot going to it. It's mostly about rights of defendants in court, stuff like that. But this specifically is about the right to legal representation in court.
Okay, man, it's definitely a pretty important amendment to protect. I mean, I think everybody should have justice and should be represented equally.
Especially for something that serious, it's something that you have to have if you want to have a fair country that's not corrupt.
Yeah.
So that right there pretty much wraps up episode 1629 of the Gov Tuah Podcast. Stay tuned for next week this time for the episode 1630. Cardi, do you have any closing thoughts?
Man, these court cases are just massive.
Yeah.
You know what else is massive?
What?
The low taper fade.